we're here. Here we're going to go. This is about tuning a hand plane. Specifically, you've got a hand plane for Christmas and you've never had one before and you really want to use it, and what do you do to set it up? The things I'm going to do to set this up is what I would set up for any hand plane I just got. Yeah, I could have gone to the antique fair and got an old one, and I'm going to do to that what I'm going to do to this. So the first thing we're going to do is take it out of the package. Now, this thing is covered with a substance called cosmoline. Cosmoline is really gooey, and it also stops metal from rusting. And it's really good in saltwater environments. We'll throw that away. So we've got to get all this stuff cleaned up before we could use it. And then we want to do some other stuff to it too. So the first thing we want to do, open this up here. This should hand tighten just like this. You shouldn't really have to go, if you do, it's too tight. This comes off. Now comes our blade combination. And cosmoline is everything. So we're going to wipe this off as we do. And what I'm holding in my hand called the blade and the chip breaker. The chip breaker is very important. It's what causes the wood fibers to bend up and break like that when we're cutting. So just so everybody can see, the blade is always poking out from the bottom. Okay? So this means the chip breaker is on top, blade's on the bottom. Okay? Normally when I look down at a blade in a hand plane, I'm going to have a short piece and a long piece. Short piece is usually the chip breaker. Can you have a set where they're both the same length? Absolutely. But normally it's shorter. The chip breaker is always on top. But when you look at them, there doesn't look like there's a whole lot of difference. The big difference is right here on the chip breaker, there's a little recess right here and it goes all the way down. So part of this chip breaker is pressing down on the blade. Okay? This blade is sharp, but it hasn't been honed. So in fact, as you rub your finger on this, you can feel the burr. Yeah. And we're going to take that off. Oh yeah, yeah. And trust me, there's a burr here. This is the stage where I tell them, if you're not sure how to put things together, if you've got a little cell phone, start taking pictures. Take pictures of it put together, and every time you take some, take a picture, and that way you can always go back. Here we're going to take our screwdriver, we're just going to turn this a little bit. We never want to really super tighten these things down, just a little turn is all we need. Slides forward and out. So here's my chip breaker, and this is that cosmoline stuff.
Oh, okay.
It's everywhere. And if we don't take it out, the world thinks this is a great place to live. So we used to complain as sellers to the manufacturers, you guys are killing us. These things are coated in cosmoline. It takes us a long time to clean this stuff up. Quit it. So they really cut back on the cosmoline. And then we said, what's wrong with you guys? The stuff you're selling us is rusted. Now they put back on the cosmoline and they don't listen to our phone calls. So all we're doing right now is just wiping the extra cosmoline off, and then we're going to clean these. We're going to clean them with one of two things. Denatured alcohol works really good. So does mineral spirits. Okay? To be a little different today, I'm going to use denatured alcohol. And all we want to do is just get a rag with it. And then we're just going to wipe it down, get all that extra cosmoline off. And what we're going to do before we seal everything back together is we're going to spray some lubricant on this so that it won't rust. Now, the tip of this chip breaker is very sharp, just like that blade. So don't do this, because you'll be donating blood to the cause. A normal hand plane If it's got a whole number, like a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, the blades will be 2 inches wide. If it's a 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, it'll be 2.5 inches wide. The steel that the blade is made from is important. You're going to find stainless and you're going to find high carbon. Okay, stainless like this is what we call A2 steel. It's air dried, and it's the second formula, A2. It's a really good hard steel. It's hard to get this to rust. But because it's so hard, you can't get it as sharp, even though we will never know the difference, as carbon steel. High carbon steel is what they make scalpels out of. You can get it incredibly sharp, and it incredibly rusts very fast. So you always have to really keep it covered with waxes and oils and stuff like that. If you see an A, it's an air-cooled steel, and it's most likely stainless. There's a third, and that is the one that they put in those cryo things to get them down really, really super cold, a couple hundred degrees below zero. As the steel cools, if it cools rapidly, it's going to have big grains in it. If it cools slowly, little grains will form. If it cools way, way, way down, you have really minuscule microscopic grains that really interact hard. So all purposes, they're all going to work fine. What you need to know about cryogenic steel is that it is so hard, a grinding wheel won't cut it. If you have a white grinding wheel and you try to sharpen it on a grinding wheel or a water stone, it's not going to cut the steel. You need a ceramic. So if you have a ceramic or a diamond, you can, if you use a diamond hone or a diamond bar to sharpen, diamond will sharpen this with no problem if it's cryo. If it's not, if it is cryo, you can hand sharpen it with. You can't even use a grinder. So we've got these cleaned. Now we move over here to the saddle, and here we see again lots and lots of cosmoline. Now, this is a bedrock plane. It's a Stanley design that's several hundred years old. This is the bedrock. You don't need to touch this. This is good. Okay? When this was put together, no cosmoline was on this yet. But you'll see these studs here hold it in place. These screws take off the tension, and you can move this backwards and forward or take it off. Okay? And this is the master screw here. Okay? No bueno if you move this. Okay? Now, if you buy an old used one and this is covered with rust, okay, then you got to take it apart. You got to deal with that, flatten stuff, and put it back together. But for a brand new plane, no. So we're good right here. We still got all kinds of stuff on the outside. So we take care of this. Will cosmoline cause any harm to our plane? No, it just attracts dust. So now, what we want to do is, let me set this on the cloth. We want to check these to make sure all this stuff is tight. And these are screws that will hold these handles in. If we need to tighten them, we can give a little turn. If anyone's going to be loose, it's usually this one. Yeah, see, this one right here is just a little bit loose, so it's nice, tight, and ready to go. This is what adjusts the plane from side to side. And we're going to start it with right in the middle. And this is the little carriageway that we turn this goes up and down and makes the blade go in and out. So as we turn this, it moves freely. So what we want to do with this part is now we want to put some lubrication on here to keep it. And we can use all kinds of stuff. We can use paste wax. I like the spray lubes. So I just come in here like this. That's all I need. And then I wipe up the excess. Okay, now let's talk about these. We want to hone this. 1200 grit sandpaper. We're also going to use this to check the flatness of the bottom. The first thing we're going to do, and we'll use this. Again, this is a honing type process. You don't have to go gorilla crazy on stuff. So the first thing we want to do is make sure there's no burr on the back of this blade. So we're going to put it flat, and we're going to pull it towards us, and we're done. And that takes away the flat. We want to look at the stripe marks and see that they're continuous. What do I mean by that? We don't want a dip in the side of the blade. And we see across, this is good. This is good blade, it's nice and flat. We're done with that. For the honing, we just come up, establish the bevel, and I always put a little tiny bevel in here that I just sharpen from that point instead of the whole thing. And all we're really going to do is just take this, raise it about a couple degrees, and pull back, and it's done. What we've done is we've taken off the little bits of steel that were made at sharpening. If this is my sharpening stone and my hand is the steel, part of the steel being cut rolls up like this and forms that little burr that you all felt. The problem with this is now this burr is hanging over the edge. So when I go to use this the first time, if I don't take these away, it's going to collapse over the edge and go instantly dull. That's why that little thing is important, and that's why you don't have to do much, because to see this burr, you can feel it, but to see it, you need like a magnifying or a microscope actually. So it doesn't take much to get rid of it. We're not and that's all it takes. On the chip breaker, what I like to do on the chip breaker, I like to take it, lay it flat, just like this, and give it a couple done side to side. Remember, this is sharp like a knife. And all we're doing here is taking any stuff off of this. And now, with that all done, we're going to put some lubricant on these. Again, this is good steel. It's a stainless, so it really, if you've gotten this to rust, you've done something. But normally on the older, especially the older planes, anything usually more than 30 years old, they're going to be a high carbon steel, and they rust like a son of a gun. That's why those old planes that you see are so rusty, is because of the high carbon steel in them. So the next thing we need to think about is how far do we want the chip breaker from the edge of the blade? And this is our call. We can do this. Okay, this is what came with the plane. Remember, that's how far that chip breaker was back?
Right.
I think that's too far back. So what I do is I come out here, and this is about 1/16 of an inch. So this is where I like to put my chip breaker. I really haven't, I've tried them closer, and this is the best. This is, to me, the best general overall. You'd like it be supported as close to the edge, but not so close that it stops being a chip breaker. And the big thing is lining everything up so it's flat across. again, don't Gorilla tighten this. Now, you'd be better off if you honed with leather. If you don't have leather, you can use like a 1200 15 grit sandpaper. We're also going to use it for something else. We want to make sure this bottom's flat. So how are we going to do that? The easiest way to do that is take some pencil marks and go like that. Take our sandpaper, and what we're going to look is, after a couple passes, see if there's any pencil marks. This pencil marks will be in the high areas. We really don't want any high areas at all. If you use 1200, you don't get a very bad scratch pattern. If you don't use 1200, you can get a scratch pattern. So we're saying we're a little bit low right here, but the big thing is we weren't low right there. This is where we're really concerned about. Not so much here because it's supported on the sides and the back, but right there, because then it's low going into the throat. And we're now, am I limited to 1200 of this? No. If I wanted to, I could use a 200. Let's see. Yep, here's a 200. Now what a more aggressive grit sandpaper is going to do, it's going to leave these lines nice straight. So you don't even put pencil marks on there. As long as you can see those lines and there's no gaps in them, then we're happy little campers. So in this case, this is a nice flat bottom. The manufacturer did very well. Now, can I put a lubricant on the bottom of this hand plane? Or is it going to mess up the wood? Mess up the finish? The answer is yes, you can put a lubricant on there as long as it's a non-silicone base. So if I wanted to, I can put on paste wax. If I wanted to, I can spray this stuff again. But I like to do this before we start handling everything. Wipe up the excess, and we're good to go. Now, we'll put this back together. How does it go back together again? Now I remember. This drops right in here. The little thing that goes up and down fits into a little notch right here. And then we take our frog, we put this on, wipe this off. If there's any mistake people make with these is they have this too tight, and that comes from this screw right here. This is set at the factory, how the factory wants it. And then when you put it on here, you try to line it up vertically so that it's flat on the bottom, and the best way to do that is go by this little. So we're going to move this, get that in when it's set. And if we did this right, this should be almost out, but not quite. And so now, what we want to do is adjust this so that it's just popping out. Now you'll find out that once you put pressure on here, this is not as free flowing as it was. And it's just making sure we got a good range of motion right here. Or you can do this. How do you know when to touch this? Well, when this goes down and all of a sudden this blade stops going down, it means it's touching. Take it back up a little bit. If you're going to do a whole lot of adjustments like when you first do it, it's best to do it without the frog on. And now we should just have a couple moves. What we're trying to get is nice fluffy shavings. So I'm going to take this piece of wood here. Take your shave and go straight, or you can do it at an angle. I like doing it at an angle. So it sounds like it's fighting me, so I'm getting kind of thick shavings. So that tells me I need to come back. A little slop and take out the slop. Look, bring it back up a little bit. And try again. Getting better. This is what we're getting. Just really nice fluffy shavings. If I want to, take it back a little bit. Oh, wrong one. So turning it to you, just pulling the blade up. Turning it away from you is putting the blade down. There we go. This is what you're striving for, so it goes just like this. Fluffy shavings. Who wants to try?